Prince Harry didn't do a great job of explaining it when he
No,
video.
doing
It
this,
just
doing
made it
this
look
was
a
like,
bit
what the hell is
silly,
that? Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I was like,
So,
no, stop.
sure.
You said you created your phobias, and
Yeah,
I want to pick up on that, not because
sure.
I disagree, but people might find it a bit judgmental or brutal or unpleasant, even, and also the idea of deprogramming. So, can you
Yeah.
be, can
Yeah,
you think
maybe not
about
using the technical. Yeah.
creating
So,
phobias, what that means?
so it means you've linked danger to something that isn't statistically dangerous.
Yeah.
So you have, and the thing I always say to my clients is, you are doing something to feel happy, to be sad, to be fearful, albeit subconsciously. And so everything we do has a recipe to it. So with fear, yes, it's an automatic response subconsciously, but it's we're doing something with what we say to ourselves, what we picture in our mind's eye, with what we believe, with what we feel, with how we breathe, with how we hold
There's some
ourselves.
sense in which we behaviorally reinforce what's going
Exactly,
on. Yeah.
exactly. And so it's finding those rest. So it's like, okay, when don't I do this? And so with something like public speaking, it's like, okay, well, when I'm with my friends, I don't do it. Okay, so what's the difference between talking to your friends and talking to the CEO or whatever?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't believe I'm going to be judged. So the belief there is that I'm going to be judged. So that is what I mean by. So when you work on that belief, when you change that belief, you're going to change how you feel potentially. I mean, there's normally more than one layer to these things.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by creating it. So it's not about judgment, but it is about empowerment. It's about realizing you are not a victim of your feelings. It's about realizing that you create any state you want depending on what you're focusing on, what you're
There's an
feeling.
old saying from the original behavioral therapist guy, I can't remember his name, but he said,
Beck,
you're
do you mean
afraid of
Beck?
the bear because you run away from it. You don't run away from the bear because you're afraid of it. Um,
Yes.
which is
Nice.
not advice on dealing with bears before anyone
Yes,
suggests.
it's more metaphorically speaking. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Don't learn about bears properly, but it's that sense in which, and it's like the example I usually give to people is if we think about phobias around spiders in the UK, they don't make
Yeah,
any rational sense because rationally spiders can't hurt us in the UK.
yeah,
If it was in Australia, it's not a phobia, it's a genuine
yeah.
fear.
And
That makes
you know what?
sense.
I say the exact same thing to my
Right,
clients,
literally.
and
But in
yeah,
the UK, it is irrational. It's not based on any fact. And we reinforce what is a natural response? We see something, we're shocked, and we go, oh.
yeah, yeah.
And then if we don't sort of challenge that, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, not yeah. So challenge it would imply sort of exposure therapy, which is one way of dealing with the phobia. But it's more how do you change those subconscious patterns? How do you desensitizing the memory? So for me, getting rid of the one thing that I wasn't the only thing I needed to do, but was to desensitize that memory of looking at that scorch mark and taking out the emotional charge of it. And then
Yeah.
things like eye movement processes and what's called bilateral stimulation. These kind of the rewind process, these kind of things that actually you can relive the event without reliving the emotion. Those are also very helpful. So
Yeah.
it's not
So
just
let's
about
again, very
yeah.
technical terms. I think it's
Sorry.
important to explain. So
Yeah.
for people that don't understand, the brain is generally structured in up and down, left and right.
Yeah.
And information moves around up and down, left and right when we're asleep, for example, in
Yeah.
REM sleep. That's what it does. It takes working memory, i.e., what happened today, and it moves it
Yeah.
around and goes, oh, it fits there, it fits there, it doesn't fit there. Let's create something new to fit it somewhere. So
Yeah.
that's sort of what happens. And
Yes.
EMDR, before we knew it, but we now understand, sort of stumbled onto that, really. I think
Yes.
in the early days,
Yeah.
I think that's
Absolutely.
reasonable to say, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
The
And
bilateral
get
stimulation, just explain that a little bit, because
right.
I think particularly because Prince Harry didn't do a great job of explaining it when he
No,
video. It just
doing
made it
this
look
was
a
like,
bit
what the hell is
silly,
that? Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sort of
Yeah.
like I was like,
So
no, stop. So just
so yeah.
explain that brain movement stuff.
Well, I mean, it's important to realize I'm not a neuroscientist, so I probably won't explain it as well as a scientist can.
Explain it as a
But
practitioner.
yeah, but as a practitioner, basically, you're to your point, you're storing emotions in certain places, and when you do various self-soothing exercises or what's called bilateral stimulation, so your eyes go left and right, or you sort of tap in rhythmical movements, it takes out the emotional charge. The layman's way of saying it, though, is I say it like this: I say, if you're trying to relive a negative emotion while imagining your best kiss, you're going to feel very different about it.
Yeah.
It's your brain can't hold two emotions at once, and so by going left and right, the brain is like, how am I supposed to feel about this? And it normally, as long as there's not what you call secondary gain. As long as there's not a strong need that this behavior is meeting, and come on to this, the impact of it gets less and less and less. And we don't realize this. But when we have any kind of issue, to be honest, but certainly with phobias, every time we look at the plane, we're thinking back to those negative patterns. And there might be more than one, but there'll be certain trigger events that have created this pattern.
Let's just deconstruct that again. It's interesting language. We are,
Sure.
we are, as opposed to the brain is structured in a certain way to do certain things. And I'll make a broad statement here. The brain is specifically designed to create habit, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make things easy for us, so we don't have to think about it. We can just
we
do
do
it without thought.
Yeah, we do what's called generalize. So
say that again. I missed that word.
We generalize. We do what's called generalizations. So we see a seat. We come in. So someone comes into my office and they see the chair. They know to sit in the chair. They know to put their cup of coffee or their water on the table. They have maybe never seen that chair before in their life, or that table. That is because the brain generalizes. It's a very useful skill, because otherwise it'd have to relearn what a chair was. But when you have a bad experience, when you have a traumatic experience, when you have a negative association, then that thing can become generalized to all dogs are dangerous, all planes are dangerous, all public speaking is going to be embarrassing.
Yeah, and more than that, we can also inherit it through the amygdala into uterine as well. So we can inherit several generations of stuff, and this stuff works whether it's inherited or it's developed through
experience. It's still to do with changing what we're linking, in layman's terms, what we're linking pain and pleasure to. How we're
so we can work simply with symptoms, if you like, as well. We don't really need the narrative and the story of what did happen. We can just notice symptoms.
Yeah, and sometimes just talking about it can actually reinforce the fear, because every time you're going back without doing something to separate yourself from it, you're actually reliving the fear.
So remember I said before we started, Chris, this is what we need to be talking about. I knew we'd get right into it.